Good day everyone, I'm Floremy B. Jumabok. So for today, I will discuss the learning and behavior characteristics of children with disabilities. So results of studies show that there are at least 99 separate characteristics of children with learning disabilities. So more than 500,000 combinations of cognitive or socio-emotional problems associated with the condition are possible. So the large number of learning characteristics makes it difficult to interpret research findings that can provide the basis for recommending effective teaching strategies. So learning disabilities may occur within the lifespan. The symptoms and characteristics can be manifested immediately after birth, during infancy, through the school years, and adulthood. So the first is reading. Possess the most difficulty among all the subject and the curriculum. It may be recalled the facets of curriculum are listening, speaking, reading, and writing. Thus, reading problems are answered by deficiencies in language skills, especially the phonological skills. So these skills develop the ability to understand the rules of how various sounds go with certain letters to make up words called grapheme corresponds. So the difficulty in breaking words into their components sounds result to difficulties in reading and spelling. Next one is written language. Possess several problems in one or more of the following areas. So the handwriting, spelling, composition, and writing, which is illegible and slow. So studies show that these children are not aware of the basic purpose of writing as an act of communication. So they approach writing as a test-taking task. They write shorter sentences and stories. They do not use writing strategies spontaneously. So their written work showed the lack of planning, organizing, drafting, and editing. Next one is spoken language. Possess problems on the mechanical uses of language in syntax or grammar, semantics or word meaning and phonology of the breakdown of words into their component sound and leading individual sounds composed word. So next is pragmatics or social uses of language. Possess problems on the ability to carry on a conversation. So children with learning disabilities are found to be unable to engage in the mutual give and take in carrying on conversation. So while they are often agreeable and many times they find it difficult to understand idea. So conversations are marked by long silences and ability to understand the other person's statement or questions. So they tend to answer their own questions before the other person has the chance to respond. And they also tend to make irrelevant comments that make the other person uncomfortable. Next is mathematics. Problems are recognized as second to deficiencies in reading language and spelling. Next is these children tend to fail and be retrained in grade level. So the level of academic achievement tends to decrease progressively as the grade level increase. So they find their studies to be more difficult as they go up the grades. Next is behavior problems. Remain consistent across grade levels both in school, in community, and at home. So common behavior problems are inattention, impulsively, and hyperactivity. So in general, next one is in general, social acceptance. It is low. Some can be popular. Now, let's proceed the perceptual motor and general coordination problem. So children with learning disabilities exhibit visual, auditory, perceptual disabilities. This problem is not lack of acuity or sharpness in vision of audition in responding to visual and auditory perceptual stimulation. The disturbance is organizing and interpreting visual and auditory stimuli. Thus, they have problems in seeing and remembering visual shapes that leads to rehearsal of B and D. For example, they have difficulties in discriminating two words that sounds alike, such as meet and knit. So, or in the following oral instruction. So, they have difficulty with physical activities that involve gross and fine motor skills. They tend to drop things as thought they are all thumbs or have two left feet. So, they have problems with attention and hyperactivity. Now, let's proceed the memory, cognitive, and metacognitive problems. So, problems in memory, cognitive, and metacognitive areas are related. So, if there is problem in memory, then there are also problem in understanding or cognition. The problem show that in difficulties in remembering assignment and appointments, so though smart, the students forget the lesson easily and also deficits in memory because they do not use memory strategies like rehearsal, categorizing, and use of mnemonics. So there are problems in cognition that covers different aspects of thinking and problem solving. So this organized thinking occurs as a result of problem in planning, organizing their lives at home and in school. So difficulties in metacognition result from lack of awareness of skill strategies and resources of person task effectivity. So a child with a mild learning disabilities manifest deficit in cognitive functioning that show in poor academic performance in the different areas of learning. Reading, language, and mathematics are subject areas where they find the most difficulties. So the area in cognitive functioning are most affected are attention, memory, and thinking, or the executive functions of the mind. So next is attention deficit. So selective attention, or the ability to focus the relevant details of the lesson in the first requirements for learning to take place. So children who cannot pay attention cannot focus on the teaching episode for a particular subject. So the deficits in attention results in inefficiency learning or no learning at all. So students with disabilities learning do not learn despite average cognitive ability because attention deficit. So they cannot scan all the sensory stimuli such as the instructional aids used by the teacher, and instead are distracted by extra news or unrelated things. They appear to lack of the ability to sort information as shown by the wrong responses that they often give when asked questions. Lesson. So selective attention can be increased through coding and efficient selective attention strategies. Next is poor memory. So poor ability to store and retrieve information or previous learning is very evident among children with disabilities. So they find difficulty in remembering mathematics facts, spelling, words, vocabulary, meaning, content, knowledge, and information. So studies show that as verbal or written rehearsal, coding or associating a new item with a concept already in memory. Imaginary and mnemonics are either absent, immature, or inefficiently used. So to help a students with attention deficits, the teacher frequently call him or her back to attention. Likewise, they provide the students with study guides and summaries of the lesson. The teachers have yet to train the students to organize his time, his lesson, and herself. So he has to increase his ability to process information, develop selective and sustained attention, use rehearsal memory strategies, and self-monitoring strategies to keep track and continue to improve his own learning. Now, let's proceed the problems in social competence. So problems in relating other people is not a characteristic of persons with learning disabilities. Rather, it is an outcome of the different social climates created by people in school, at home, and the community, and other places with one personnel with learning disabilities interact. So, scoring tests in social skills can change over time as they gain competence in social situations. Social competence may be related to social status. Thus, a learning disabled person may be popular, neglected, or rejected. They can have low social acceptance but can enjoy popularity, or they may have significant deficit in social skills but enjoy acceptance by their classmates and friends. One thing sure, these children can enjoy socially rewarding experiences in mainstream classroom. So now, let's proceed the last topic. Causes of learning disabilities. So the causes of learning disabilities are attributed to genetic and environmental factors. As discussed in Chapter 4, the genetic factors refers to the characteristics that are inherited through the genes, chromosomes, and deoxyribonucleic acid or DNA. So, over the years, genetic researches show that learning disabilities tend to run in families and heredity is possible causes. So, studies of identical or monozygotic twins where one fertilized egg and splits and develops into two separate embryo show that when the two twins has a reading disability, and then the other twin is more likely also have a reading disability. So, in identical, twins possess the same physical and mental traits. However, research show that this is not true. In this case of fraternal or dizygotic twins, where two egg cells are fertilized and develop into two distinct embryos, or The fraternal twins carry different physical and mental traits. So that's all. Thank you and God bless.
Good morning, everyone. Another beautiful day for all of us. I am Liberty H. Delovino, another reporter for our topic is students with learning disabilities. But today, I will discuss about the body's control system, the brain and nerves. How does it connect in our main topic, and why is it important that we study about our brain and nerves? Are you excited, everyone? Well, let's start our discussion by first analyze and know what is the brain. The brain and nervous system control our perceptions, thoughts, and voluntary actions, and also most of the body's internal processes. The brain is contained within the hard bones of the skull and cushioned against injury by surrounding membranes. And did you know that our brain is made up of just 2% of the average adult's weight but uses 20% of oxygen intake? And the brain has about 1,000 billion nerve cells. So, let us talk about our brain with its three major areas. First is the cerebrum, second the cerebellum, and the third one is brain stem. Now let's talk about cerebrum. Cerebrum is the largest part of the brain and is associated with conscious activities and intelligence. It is divided into two hemispheres and consists of gray matter or neuron cells and white matter or nerve fibers. The left hemisphere controls the right side of the body and vice versa. So, some 90% of the human population is right-handed, which means that left hemispheres of their brains are dominant. The corpus callosum joins the two hemispheres of the cerebrum. The cerebral cortex is the outer surface of the cerebrum, and it processes information from and for different parts of our body. The somatosensory strip processes sensations, while the motor strip controls the muscles. Next is cerebellum. It coordinates movement and balance. The thalamus acts as a sort of junction box, sending incoming nerve impulses to different areas of the brain. The medulla oblongata controls heart rate and breathing. The brain stem connects the brain to the spinal cord. The brain is wrapped in three separate membranes. The space between these membranes contains fluid, which allows the brain to float and thus insulates it from neck to the head. The same membranes extend over the spinal cord. 12 cranial nerves emerge from the brain itself. These subdivide to reach the eyes, nose, ears, and mouth, as well as all the muscles of the face. One of the nerves extends down independently of the spinal cord to the heart, larynx, lungs, and stomach, while another goes to muscles in the neck, where it helps to control the vocal apparatus. The average adult male brain weighs 1.4 kilograms or 3 pounds. The adult female brain weighs 1.25 kilograms or 2.75 pounds. The mass of brain tissue reaches a maximum of at the age of 20 years and thereafter decreases. The spinal cord is the central pathway of the nervous system that runs through a channel within the top vertebrae of the spine. And the last one is nervous system. It is a network of nerves extends throughout our bodies, carrying sensory information to the brain and instructions from it. The brain and the spinal cord together from the central nervous system, or CNS, is the rest of the network is known as the peripheral nervous system, or PNS.
For further understanding about the brain and nerves, let us watch this video.
Today, we will talk about an organ that rules all of our body, and that is our brain. As it is the most sensitive organ, our brain is kept inside a bony covering called skull. From doing physical activity to solving logical problems, from dealing with emotions and feeling to creativity, the brain is responsible for all. Therefore, it never sleeps. Our brain can be divided into three main parts: the cerebrum, the cerebellum, and brainstem. Cerebrum is the largest part of brain, which can be further divided into right and left halves, called hemisphere. Each cerebral hemisphere has four lobes, namely frontal lobe, parietal lobe, occipital lobe, and temporal lobe. Each lobe performs different functions. Cerebellum is responsible for movement and coordination. It gives you sense of balance and thus prevents you from falling down. Brainstem includes midbrain, pons, and medulla oblongata. It controls your body's involuntary actions, like breathing, heart rate, and blood pressure. Brain comes under a system called nervous system. Structurally, nervous system is classified into two types: central nervous system, CNS, and peripheral nervous system, PNS. The central nervous system comprises of the brain and spinal cord. The spinal cord is the bridge that connects the brain to peripheral nervous system. It starts from medulla oblongata and stretches to lumbar region of the spine or vertebral column. The peripheral nervous system is a network of nerves spread across our body. Think of peripheral nervous system as a network of highway that connects the body with central nervous system. This highway has two-way traffic. Let's see how. When you hold a hot cup of coffee, sensory neurons in your hand transmit signal to brain through sensory neurons, also called afferent neurons, that the cup is hot. Your brain process that information and send response through motor neurons, known as efferent neurons, that you must put that cup back. PNS consists of total 43 pairs of nerve, among which 12 originate in brain, named as cranial nerves, and 31 originate from spinal cord, hence called as spinal nerves. Here, you hear the word neuron. Neuron is the basic unit of nervous system. It is the nerve cell which transmit electrical signals to brain. A neuron has three parts: dendrites, soma or cell body, and axon. Dendrites serve as input device for neuron because it receives input from other nerve cells. Soma or cell body of neuron contains nucleus. Axon serve as output device from where it transmit electrical response to other neurons.
Now, let us talk about the genetic factors in learning disabilities. Learning disabilities constitutes a heterogeneous set of conditions with no single syndrome nor a single cause or etiology. Thus far, research findings cite two genetic causes of learning disabilities. These are brain damage and biochemical imbalance. So, this time let us know what is brain damage. It is an increasing consensus attributes learning disabilities to neurological dysfunction or central nervous system pathology. The models of the causes of learning disabilities state that the condition can be A is hereditary or indicating the presence in the genetic makeup of certain inherited diseases or disorders that damage the brain. B is innate or resulting from biological influences during the period of conception or pregnancy. And letter C is congenital or constitutional, indicating that biological influences may have originated during the process of gestation or development in the prenatal or before birth, perinatal during birth, or postnatal after birth periods of development. Some individuals with learning disabilities show definite signs of brain damage, which may well be the cause of their learning problems. In recent years, neurologists and other professionals use advanced technology to assess brain activities more accurately. Some of the new procedures are letter A, electroencephalogram or EEG. This is a graphic measure and recording of the brain's electrical impulses. The EEG is a digitally computerized recording and analysis of the brain waves. Many students with learning disabilities have abnormal brain waves as shown by the encephalograph that records the brain's electrical impulses. And next one is computerized tomographic scans, or what we call a CT scan. This is a neuroimaging technique whereby x-rays of the brain are compiled by a computer to produce an overall picture of the brain. The CT scans enable the neurologist to look at the overlying physiology or physical condition of the brain. The next one is magnetic resonance imaging or MRI. This is a neuroimaging technique whereby radio waves are used to produce cross-sectional images of the brain. CT scans and MRI results show that the brains of those with learning disabilities suffered from a disruption in the development of the neural cells during the early months of pregnancy. This means that the neurons in the brain area did not develop normally. The next genetic factors of learning disabilities is biochemical imbalance, and some researchers claim that biochemical disturbances in a child's body cause learning disabilities. A study in 1975 by Feingold suggested that artificial food colors, flavors, preservatives, salicylates, and megavitamins in many of the foods that children eat can cause learning disabilities and hyperactivity. But a comprehensive review of diet-related studies concluded that very little pieces of evidence supported that statement. So, although it is possible or even probable that biochemistry may affect a child's behavior and learning in the classroom, no scientific evidence exists today to reveal the nature or extent of that influence. The third one is environmental factors. The environmental factors are difficult to study. There are pieces of evidence that show poverty, malnutrition, and inadequate learning experiences that include poor teaching and lack of instructional materials are as cause of environmental disadvantage that make children prone to learning problems. There are three types of environmental influences believed to be related to children's learning problems, and these are number one, environmental disturbance. And many children with learning problems have behavioral disorders as well. Whether one causes the other or whether both are caused by some other factors remains uncertain. Number two is lack of motivation. It is difficult to identify reinforcing activities for some students with learning disabilities. It is possible that they may not simply be interested in any of the things those other children like. And number three is poor instruction. Although children are able to learn in spite of poor teaching and inadequate strategies, other children are less fortunate. Some of them have experienced poor instruction in the early grades, are not able to catch up with their peers. So now let's talk about the assessment of learning disabilities. Learning disabilities is a complex condition, and therefore a battery of 3 to 5 tests is used to identify students who may have learning disabilities. These are norm reference tests, process tests, informal reading inventories, criterion reference tests, and direct daily measurement of learning. The National Achievement Test, the Regional Assessment Test, and the School-Based Achievement Test are examples of norm reference tests. The assessment tests are all designed to measure how many of the skills in each learning area, English, Filipino, mathematics, science, and makabayan, have been learned or mastered. Students with learning disabilities manifest deficits in the expected number of skills for mastery in a particular grade level. One area of difficulty that students with learning disabilities experience is in processing information. The specific perceptual problems are in visual perception, auditory perception, and visual motor coordination. Criterion reference tests in specific subjects such as reading, language, and mathematics are used to determine the mastery level of a predetermined criterion that the students should be capable of achieving. The specific skills already learned and identified, as well as those that have yet to be mastered. A widely used American criterion reference test is the Brigance Diagnostic Inventory of Basic Skills, or Brigance 1983. Most school divisions have developed their own reading tests and inventories to determine the student's reading ability. An informal reading inventory usually consists of a series of progressively more difficult sentences and paragraphs for oral reading. The student's mistakes in reading skills are recorded, particularly in pronunciation of vowels and consonants, omissions, reversals, substitutions, and comprehension. A useful method of determining a student's performance in learning a particular skill is through direct daily measurement of his or her progress in learning the skill. For example, in a mathematics lesson, the teacher observes and records the correct rate of number of facts stated or written correctly per minute, the error rate or how many times the student gives wrong responses, and the percentage of correct answers. Direct daily measurement of the mastery of the skill being taught informs the teacher about the deficit in learning and allows him or her to make the necessary adjustments in the lesson. Specialists recommend that children regular classes who have learning disabilities be identified as early as possible through appropriate assessment procedures. Then, an individualized educational plan or IEP can be prepared based on the learning and behavioral characteristics found in the assessment results. So, a special education teacher should also assist the regular teacher in teaching children with learning disabilities. The studies show that many of their learning problems can be lessened through direct and systematic instruction. Behavior modification techniques can decrease their undesirable behavior of inattention, impulsivity, and hyperactivity. In the absence of qualified school psychologists or guidance counselors, the school principal can initiate a screening program to locate these children in the regular classes. Inquiries on assessment and early intervention can be addressed to the Department of Education, Bureau of Elementary Education, as a Special Education Division. Early location, assessment, and identification of these children has the potential to prevent or reduce the occurrence of future learning problems. Special education experts highly recommend the use of the diagnostic prescriptive evaluation approach in teaching children with learning disabilities as well as those with mental retardation. Here, the results of assessment are used directly to draw up an individualized education plan. The long-term annual goals that the student can achieve are identified. Then the short-term quarterly objectives are prescribed. Monthly, weekly, and daily instructional plans are written to achieve the preset goals and objectives of teaching. Formative and summative evaluation procedures are employed to track the mastery of the skills. Attention deficit disorder or ADD and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD. Attention deficit disorder and attention deficit hyperactivity disorder are conditions in which children exhibit significant differences in the ability to pay attention and to engage in active work compared to their normal peers. These children show lack of control in saying things, cannot wait for their turn, and often engage in dangerous activities. ADD and ADHD are common characteristics of children with learning disabilities. There is attention deficit when the child is not able to attend to a task expected of his or her age and grade level. And hyperactivity is present when the child engages in high rates of purposeless movement. The impulsivity is displayed through inappropriate behavior. The essential feature of ADD or ADHD is a persistent pattern of a combination of inattention, hyperactivity, and impulsivity that is more frequent and severe, maladaptive, and inconsistent with the development level of the child. Let us talk about the ADD or ADHD iceberg. It is a complex condition. The condition may range from mild, moderate, severe to profound, and may exist together with other disabilities. While there are observable symptoms and characteristics, many of the signs are not visible. That is why it is called ADD or ADHD iceberg, compared to an iceberg where only 1/8 can be seen in the surface of the ocean. Try to imagine an iceberg that only 1/8 can be seen in the surface of the ocean. Most of the symptoms and characteristics of ADD or ADHD are not observable and remain hidden in the person's behavior. So for further understanding about these disabilities or ADD and ADHD, I have prepared a short video for us to understand and learn more about this disorder.
ADHD, or Attention Deficit Hyperactivity Disorder, is an innate attention deficit disorder. Children who have ADHD often have problems with paying attention for an extended period of time. They are often unable to focus long on a command to work. However, when they are interested, they can keep focused. They tend to move continuously and are known to be impulsive, not thinking before doing something. Although ADHD is often diagnosed and is said to occur in children more frequently, adults also have the tendency to suffer from the disorder. The exact cause of ADHD is unknown, but there are 3 factors related to its occurrence. They are heredity. Children with a parent with ADD or ADHD have an increased chance of getting ADD or ADHD too. A neurobiological disorder in the brain that is caused by chemical imbalances inside the brain with neurotransmitters, and environmental influences. ADHD seems to be more commonly diagnosed nowadays because society generally is ADHD unfriendly. ADHD is often thought to be the same as ADD, or attention deficit disorder. Although both ADD and ADHD are an attention deficit disorder, it is not exactly the same, and ADD is a subtype of ADHD. People with ADHD are known to show hyperactivity and impulsivity, while somebody with ADD has a predominantly inattentive behavior. People with ADD have little or no symptoms of hyperactivity and impulsivity, and with predominant complaints of inattention, easy distractibility, disorganization, procrastination, and forgetfulness. People with ADD are also likely to accept and internalize the continuous negative feedback, creating a great tendency for low self-esteem, and will often lead to the development of secondary psychological problems that includes anxiety disorders, sexual and mood disorders, and substance abuse. Generally, symptoms of ADHD are inattention, hyperactivity and impulsivity, mental high sensitivity, chronic forgetfulness, anxiety, low self-esteem, anger management issues, an increased risk of addiction, smoking, drugs, alcohol, and gambling addiction, procrastination, mood swings, depression. Symptoms of ADHD may decrease with increasing age. ADHD may also entail positive qualities such as a high social intelligence, a great empathy and sensitivity, exceptional ability to see certain things in detail. They are often very caring towards others, and they often excel in talent in a certain field, such as music. There is no cure for ADHD. However, treatment can help a person feel less affected by the symptoms of ADHD. The symptoms of ADHD can be controlled by medication, behavioral management therapy, and involvement of parents and teachers. Medications called stimulants are used to control hyperactivity, impulsivity, and to increase attention span. Some commonly used stimulants for ADHD are methylphenidate and dexamphetamine. Non-stimulants are also a medication option for ADHD, like atomoxetine. Guidance includes treatment modalities that focus on behavior modification, counseling, special education, and social skills training. For more information about ADHD and possible treatments, you should contact your general practitioner.
What many teachers don't know about ADHD. Your child's ADHD is an iceberg. According to Chris A. Ziegler Dendy, just 10% of its complex symptoms are visible to the naked eye. Most teachers recognize hallmark signs like hyperactivity, impulsivity, inattention, but its lesser-known invisible challenges are easy to blame on laziness or disobedience. Use this guide to explain beneath-the-surface ADHD attributes that are commonly misunderstood at school. 1. Developmental delays. Kids with ADHD mature at a slower pace. Their brain development can lag 2 to 3 years behind their peers. A 15-year-old with ADHD may act like a 12-year-old socially and emotionally. 2. Impaired executive functioning. Executive functions help kids plan, prioritize, and execute daily tasks. When they are weak, students have trouble with remembering homework or the rules, keeping track of due dates, getting started on boring tasks, sticking with difficult projects, and retrieving facts or information. 3. Emotional dysregulation. ADHD impairs a child's ability to regulate feelings, anger, anxiety, or sadness. Students with ADHD may have overblown reactions to setbacks that seem small, and then struggle to calm down. 4. Coexisting conditions. Roughly half of all students with ADHD also have a second condition, like a learning disability, anxiety, depression, or oppositional defiant disorder. The first step towards greater learning is a comprehensive diagnosis and more complete understanding.
Before this video presentation ends, here are some takeaways or parting words from our group that we want to share with all of you. Learning disabilities is very crucial and a struggling part for other children who has this kind of disabilities. Some of them, because of the lack of support from the society, sometimes makes them more vulnerable and feel insignificant and neglected by the society and even from their peers. And after we have learned or we have studied this topic, the students with learning disabilities, as a future educator, we realize that even if we have nothing or even if we are less fortunate than everybody else, still we can be a hero for some students with learning disabilities if we just know and understand their situation better and if we are wholeheartedly helping them to cope with their struggles in learning and even in their life. Remember, as a future educators, we are not just only there to teach. We are there also to guide them, to be a tool for them to reach their goals and make their dreams come true. We hope by learning this foundation of special education, we are more understanding, observant, and more careful with our words, actions, and feelings towards them who has learning disabilities, so that together we can help them and encourage them to continue to reach their dreams and goals in life in spite of their disabilities and situations in life. Once again, thank you very much for watching and have a great day for all of us.